Good afternoon, everyone. We are having a special meeting of the Cincinnati School Board Finance Committee, which is actually, its name is now Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee. And we're going to be focusing today much less on our monthly updates than we usually do, and some of our presentations from some of our recurring guests to present, for example, about Preschool Promise and also having financial updates. Today, we're going to concentrate most of our time about and on the topic that we've been assigned by protocol and by bylaws of the strategic plan that was now in its second year and will be starting its third and final year next year. And for the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, as you can well imagine, this committee's been assigned, for the most part, the growth goals and growth discussion. So that's where our emphasis is going to be today. But before we get started with some of that, which I think will be very interesting to folks, including us, we want to start with our treasurer, who is going to present a little bit of the continuing financial impact of COVID, which is something that Member Messer had been asking about and inquiring about, particularly the last few meetings, and I think it's very helpful. So if Treasurer Wagner will begin, we will get started with that. And I understand it's not a long report, but it'll help us as we start to think about the future. Madam Treasurer?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I do have a little spreadsheet, and I'll submit it to you in writing. But so far, we've received 5 grants to help with pandemic funding. ESSER 1 provided us with $20 million. That's to be spent by September of 22.
Where did that one come from?
The federal government. It's ESSER, okay. The CARES Act one.
Okay.
And then there was a Head Start portion of that was about $500,000, which Ms. Brooks manages. Then the next one was the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That was $2.2 million, and we've almost spent that out. The fourth one was the Broadband Ohio Connectivity, is $151,000, and that's spent out. We use that for some of Jeremy's technology needs. And then the fifth one being Hamilton County's version of CARES Act, where they couldn't spend it, so they allocated some money per pupil to the Hamilton County school districts, and we were able to charge off $1.2 million. We'd originally planned on using the first CARES Act, so we were able to switch things around and free that up for something else. So that totals $24.2 million. And then in the CCIP, so the Consolidated Application through ODE, our CARES Act 2.0 or ESSER 2.0 is $93 million, and that's to be spent by September 30 of 2023. Now here's the deal. We can't start spending CARES Act 2 until we finally spend out CARES Act 1. And so we had plans this summer to use CARES Act 2 to help with the summer recovery plan. So we may have to split that plan into CARES Act 1, finish that out, and then start with CARES Act 2. But we're gathering estimates and priorities to finish out CARES Act 1 and to spend on CARES Act 2. Some of the items that we're going to try to charge to CARES Act 1 is what they're calling surveillance testing. It's the testing of high schoolers. They're estimating about $1 million a quarter. Some safety subs, some expansion of nursing. There's one other thing that's kind of significant. The Student Success Center for CARES Act 2. So trying to replicate what Walnut Hills was doing at their Student Success Center. So for every high school, there's 3 teachers. So that's on the list. Some more HVAC work for our schools to help with ventilation. And then whatever PPE and cleaning and safety supplies that has to carry over into the next year, we'll use out of the second CARES Act money. So as we firm things up, maybe by the time we have our second Finance Committee meeting of this month, I'll have a clear picture of the priorities of each of those. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do members have some questions for Jen? I know I will. Any follow-up questions? Jen, if I could ask, I'm absolutely thrilled to hear that the Student Success Center idea has moved into this category where you're even talking about it. That means it's moved quite a long way. I
Mhm.
just am a huge supporter of it. I will also say it's one of those things that the Accelerate Great Schools people have paid for a few years.
At
I
Walnut,
hope
yeah.
too. Yeah, at Walnut, and I know it's ending now.
Mhm.
I will talk to the instructional people about the fact that it's the much of the success there. I will say I have I believe a former student that's over there helping work it, but more importantly, it's a part of the Mind Print folks too. So it's been a particular group that, or at least approach, has been part of it. So I'm glad to hear that. That's great. Could I ask though? I mean, how much of this 93 million or what have you will we go? Will be so strictly COVID as we know it, if indeed the COVID risks are diminished for the coming year? I mean, how are you all figuring that out?
Well, so the rules of engagement and the first COVID, when the first CARES Act came out, they were pretty broad rules. Well, now they're starting to challenge school districts on things that they were taking out of the general fund and putting it in the CARES Act. So you just have to be well documented as to, was this really a COVID expense? And so one thing they're talking about right now is summer school versus the summer recovery plan. So summer school is only eligible for certain kids in certain grade levels with certain economic disadvantage. Well, the summer recovery program, my understanding of it is that it's more like summer. I mean, more like normal school, but it's about getting caught up, right? Or enhancing, and it's open to all students in all schools. So I think the academic team will be presenting that soon to the board, and we're waiting for those cost estimates. In terms of CARES Act 2, so the big dollar amounts that we're focusing on, the big rocks, is summer recovery and then the possibility of investing in the technology for concurrent learning, and depending on how that gets chunked up. Both of those are clear indications or allowable expenses of the CARES Act 1 and 2.
Okay.
So as long as it's about supporting, safety, health and safety related to COVID, and the preventing academic loss, which is one of their phrases, then we are safe. Ms. Bates, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Question? That's okay. Bill, do you have a question, comment?
Mm-mm.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Oh, excellent. Ryan, since this is your topic, any particular questions that you have?
No, I think I've gotten this question, as probably some of you have, just in what does this look like? What have we received? What do we anticipate? And I also get from people, how can we get engaged to make sure the story is being told? But I think the story sounds pretty good, and you've given us some other updates on these dollars, the CARES Act $2, that I think I was shocked. Was it the 92 million, right?
93.
93, yeah.
And the good news is we don't have to share that with our auxiliary partners. They're getting their own allocations. I'm actually thinking about putting this either at least once a month in the treasurer's report, at every treasurer's report, just an update, because I wanted to stay in front of the public, and so that they know how we're spending the money. It's just because all these grants came one after another, and we're trying to maximize each grant to its fullest potential, we're moving things in between them, and so it's hard to report on it right this minute. But our plan was to do it with this finance committee at the normal time, once we have the month of February closed.
And I think that's a great idea. And I think the other piece that you brought forward already was that we could use this for some of those other growth ideas, because we've drained some of our coffers in getting through the pandemic, and and we have to do things differently in the new world. And it's nice to see that we have some flexibility with that per your previous announcement.
I think if we can tie it to social distancing and the need for safety, school safety, we can use it for capital.
Yeah, God knows we got that excuse big time.
I think that would be fantastic, and it is really about space. It isn't some of the other kind of facility stuff, or some of it would be about making the air quality this or that, or some of the things that some of the older kind of older physical districts where their plant structure really is much different than ours. They're going to have to be spending money on that. So that's good. So it can be in part on facilities as it pertains to COVID. Is there, if I can ask this question real quickly, we have a number of partners that want to help us with the summer efforts. I'm thinking, ABC or CPS Outside or, I don't know, Wordplay, a couple of others, Growing Well, which is part of Interact Health. And I think they want to help us with the summer if it's related to somehow the health and safety and in instructional recovery or
To prevent instructional loss or learning loss, the better way to say it. Prevent learning loss.
Okay, that's good to know. However that is defined, but at least that's more narrow than we've seen.
So I would say that any partner that's interested should probably contact Laura and Tiane.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Great. Any other issues on this topic? Jen, you have anything else on this topic to share?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and budget update?
So everybody's been given their budget instructions, and their first round of template submissions are due March 19th. And so we'll spend that following week consolidating and making sure things aren't missed or duplicated, and then I can give a firmer update on dollars.
Can you give us a little coaching or share with us some of the expectations that you and the superintendent might have of what you want to hear from us or what you're anticipating hearing from the whole board on Wednesday as we do Old Shore, New Shore? Because I think that's the day we're supposed to at least be talking about that, right?
Yes. So there's what we've instructed in the principals and budget managers is to focus on the vital few, right? The 3 E's, first grade reading, and graduation. Of course, there's leading indicators that feed into all that, so we're not ignoring everything else.
Do those vital few again?
First grade reading, 100% first grade reading. You're going to hear this on Wednesday.
I don't care. We're here now.
Graduation and increasing the graduation rate and the 3 E's.
Oh, okay.
So we want to focus those equity asks on those services, right, to help move that needle. In terms of Old Shore, New Shore, there are things in there to help meet the board's desires in Old Shore, New Shore initiatives. Some of it have to be costed out. And so once we gather all that stuff up, I keep saying I'm a broken record. In 27 years, we've never come in under the budget target. So we'll have to make some priority decisions about the spends. Or the scope of those spends may not be fully implementable. We might have to scale back to the second year, however that works out. But so what I would say is help determine the priority of your Old Shore and New Shore stuff. So we know how to fund.
But those would be some very big ideas in which or under which other smaller things can be. You're looking for, because is the Old Shore, New Shore is about CPS next or the new CPS. It's not just the budget priorities of, those have to be together.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Some of them they'll be multi-year initiatives, right? Some of them won't be the first year, maybe the second or third year. But the things that are the first year, have to be costed out. And so helping to determine what the priorities are so that we know how to put them in order of funding.
Okay. Is there, and this is the last I'll ask about this, but is there any sense that as we get ready to finish the third year next year of the strategic plan, that, and I think it's something that Mr. Messer had suggested 2 years ago when we first started doing this, and I think Ms. Bates was also there and mentioned this, that maybe what this ends up being is the fourth and fifth year of this 3-year plan. That because we had originally talked about a decade, we talked about 5 years, and we thought, well, let's go with 3, because little did we know, we thought things just changed so fast, and that was before we had COVID. So we sound very wise now, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
through no fault of our own or credit to us. So it could be part of that. It could also kind of pan out that way as well, don't you think?
Yeah, so the beauty of that strategic plan is we wanted it to be adaptable, a living document, so that we could adapt and pivot, is I guess a word that we've been using a lot,
Yeah.
as things change, because technology is driving a lot of change too. So,
Great.
yeah.
Anybody else have anything before we move on to growth? Right. I don't know. Is Vera Brooks with us today?
She
Vera?
is.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
One of the very
Hi,
best
everybody.
ever. She actually invents schools, let alone expands preschools.
Thank you.
She invented Roberts, so that's gold standard right there. Vera, can you tell us before we move into the district-wide growth on a number of issues, especially facilities, which I think is where part of our interest is, can you kind of get us up to date regarding the preschool expansion?
Yes.
And where you are, and it's incredibly impressive. And tell us where you're planning to go. Not
Well,
where, but how.
Yeah. How? So, as you know, we had to adjust our goal this year due to C guidelines and pandemic. So our goal was at 1,500 for the end of the year. I'm pleased to report that currently we have 1,345 students, with 81 students that have reserved their preschool seats for next year as promised, which gives us a total right now of 1,426 students enrolled in preschool. We did have our preschool K push over these last 9 days, and just at the educational center alone in those 9 days, we enrolled over 30 families.
Wow.
That is not including the activity that was occurring at our 3 hub sites, which were also very busy. And that was not just for next year, 21-22, but since we have been back in our 1-4 model of 1 day distance learning, 4 days in person, we've had numerous families request to enroll immediately now. So we've been able to bring them in to where we have space available. So that is our update. We do have 519, as you know, ECE grant seats or funding. We have filled all 519 state funding seats. We have 537 students who are receiving tuition assistance. And in our Head Start, which is 701 seats, we currently have 504. With Head Start, they have changed their process somewhat, so we do have some students that are attending. We're just going through the process with Community Action Agency to have them go through their whole system. So with that, next year, moving into next year, we will be adding a classroom at Vine. We will be adding a classroom, which I'm very pleased to say, per request of their community, to Mount Washington. We will be moving 2 of the classrooms from Gamble Elementary to Rising Stars Chevy at Westwood to allow Gamble Elementary to continue their expansion of their Montessori classrooms at 6-9. We will be moving one preschool disabilities class from Carthage. That location I'm working on currently, so I don't want to let the cat out of the bag quite yet. But that will allow then Carthage to fulfill their expansion of pre-K to grade 1 to then feed into Hartwell, which will be 2nd grade to 8th grade. So by the strategic plan, which our goal was measure 5B, to increase the district's preschool enrollment seats to 2,200 seats by 2022. By next year, we will have achieved that goal. We will have 2,200 and I believe 4 preschool seats available. Now, can I fill them? That will all depend on the pandemic and safety. Is there any questions?
Mr. Messer, Ms. Bates, comments or questions?
Yes. Well, as a user of our preschool, I love to hear of the expansion, and I especially love to hear when the community's asking for it.
Yes.
But I am always into that, and I think I share this with everybody else on this committee. I think there's that East Corridor outside of Mount Washington, kind of the Middle East, that
Yes.
I get questions all the time about that. And then that question that we raised for the Preschool Promise team, which was, how are we doing with the preschool deserts? And I was asked if, one time not so long ago, somebody said, do you know if the gaps have been filled? And I really don't. So the question is, where might those exist today? And then are we kind of getting after that? And then just the last thing is the total number. What did you say the total number was of our enrollment?
Currently, in our buildings is 1,345. We have 81 seats that families are remaining with us, but they opted for us to reserve their magnet seat to begin next year. And so we have a total of 1,426 students.
Wow. And I remember when we were trying to hit 1,000. So this is like 50% over that.
Yes.
And, when a comment to that, I think some people assume that we lost some of those people. They said, oh, well, some people didn't want their kid in. So, they decided to hold their seat. Well, I had a great awareness in the North Avondale Fathers Group last week. There was a dad there, and I knew his son was in Lillian's class, and he said, well, we're not there. I'm still active in the Fathers Group, but we wanted a full-time in-person option, so we've gone to a private when we went remote. So I think we lost more than we thought, and he said he knew 3 other families that were in that same category that we didn't leave because we didn't feel safe. It was we left because we needed a full-time option. And so they kind of all went together to a place, but he said, you can rest assured we will be back this fall. And, I think this number is great.
Yeah, and to address that, Mr. Messer, we are guesstimating that we've lost probably about 100 parents this year due to that situation of not being in person. And that, it's a family's choice.
Yeah.
But we have been very active and very reaching out to families to address your question about the Middle Eastern area. I would love to eventually, if it's in the next strategic plan, to really focus in on some areas that are deserts, such as I would love to have a preschool around the Hyde Park, Oakley, and in those areas, Mount Lookout. We have Riverview and we have Mount Washington, but we have nothing in between. We have J.P. Parker, but there is a large area there. I'm working with Shara to look at, we've done a pretty good job of the west side, although that could keep expanding to service, but maybe looking at different types of staffing or programming to meet the needs of those communities. So we are looking at the shifting of just the city because we do know communities are evolving in different ways to find out where those exact needs are. We also would like to look at in those desert areas of, like Pleasant Ridge, Silverton, Kennedy Heights area, a lot of the selling of homes is shifting to younger families. So is there a greater need in those areas? Down around our Rising Stars, Ezra Charles, it has been somewhat of a challenge just because of pathways of roads and construction, but now that's evening out. So how can we meet the needs of that community to say, we have a wonderful facility here, we have great teachers. But I'd be amiss if I did not recognize, especially Maggie Neighbor and Cindy Reed, along with our hub staff, who are the ones in the field. And they're the ones reaching out to the families and making this happen.
Wonderful. Kudos, kudos, kudos.
Thank you.
Melanie?
Yes, a couple of comments. First of all, we can probably credit a lot of this. It's not growth, but at least we've stopped the bleeding in preschool because we're assuring a minimum of 4 days a week and probably 5.
Yes.
So parents count on that. And it's still uncertain what we're going to do with the K through 12. So we at least have that base. But have you taken into account the applicants in the magnet school lottery to see if, where they are, and if we can accommodate everybody? I don't want to turn anybody away, but what look-see have you in the magnet school lottery for the 3s and 4s?
Yes, and we do manage that with the preschool. So as you know, the lottery closed Friday, March 5th. So we will be receiving those names. We will begin reaching out through letters, phone calls, and emails to those parents. And I've spoken with the DSL Monisha House and her Montessori principals that we will be filling all their seats. Now, their seats are different because they only have 9 preschoolers in that classroom. But we are going to do our best to accommodate. And when we cannot fill or provide a family in the lottery with their first choice of a Montessori, we always offer another location that would meet their needs. And most families do take the alternative location in hopes that if a seat becomes available, which sometimes they do, that we then give them a call for them to then fill the next seat. Did that answer you okay? The word should be coming out in the next, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks.
Great. Thank you, Vera. Any other updates regarding preschool or whatever that's been leading our growth, very frankly, in both enrollment and spaces? How many classrooms do we have and how many standalones do we have?
We have we will have 135 classrooms at 43 sites, and we will have next year 4 standalones. That will be Vine, Rising Stars at Chevy at Westwood, Rising Stars at Aiken, and Rising Stars at Ezra Charles.
Remarkable. There's not another district in the state that is doing that, and that I know of, and I do a bunch of folk. And people look to CPS and the preschool piece as a tremendous effort. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. We're going to proceed then with the topic regarding growth because we've started to touch on that. Board members, and I think their treasurer too, Ms. Bruckner sent via email an updated growth draft that was a compilation of a lot of the ideas over the last few years that just you received the redraft of it, if you will. It's something we distributed at the board meeting last week. And there's some updates, and they're marked in yellow to see where we made some changes. I know that on page 3 of it, One of the changes that we didn't quite get in is something that Ms. Bates has brought to my attention, where we listed facilities, actual independent freestanding facilities. We did not list some of the buildings that are, let's say, on the Gamble High School grounds or a couple of other places, but most particularly, we didn't list the carriage house that is at Fairview, Derwent Clifton. So that's in there. So we'll keep adding as we know. But this is an attempt to capture where we've been and what we've talked about. And I would encourage people to look at it. I think it's relatively complete, but not perfect. She also sent a compilation of a number of notes for what I'm calling the justification of the Meridian plan, and there's 20 of those.
Can we go back to the growth plan, because I have...
Oh, yeah. Oh, hold on. Let me just get through the third thing that I'm telling you that you might have received today. And that is just a division of school buildings, east, west, and central. Those are the three things that she's distributed for us, and you've received those. And absolutely, let's go back, Melanie, to the growth. But if you guys look at those documents, that would be great. But yes, Mel.
So one consideration, and this is something else I've been mentioning, repeatedly throughout the years, and we should have some consideration for this, is an expansion of Montessori High School, because word on the street is that people are really worried about the Clark lottery, and that there will be children that will not be accepted to Clark because they're not accepted to Walnut, and we're having this, domino effect. Whether or not that gets worked out, that's, something that we can consider, but certainly we have not been able to accommodate all of the children who have applied to Clark with Montessori experience in Clark. We know that Gamble is going to be filling up with the West Side people, especially if we stick to the Meridian plan, and people aren't real keen on sending their kids on a 45-minute bus ride twice a day. If Clark is in their neighborhood, or at least within, a 15-minute, 20-minute ride. So a thought is either an expansion of Clark in some way, or consideration of a central Montessori high school to help with the overflow of Clark, or even separating the 7th and 8th graders at Clark in one building and having the high school in the existing building. Something, I'm just throwing this out, but I do think that we need to be ahead of the game in planning for Clark, because we may have a situation with that school that, we're having with, Walnut, quite frankly, although there's no limit there. But I just don't want to turn Montessori trained kids away that we've had since preschool because we haven't planned well enough.
Melanie, to speak to that, and also an idea that Ryan has put forward for at least 2 years now that I can remember. They're on, I think, both of those, your third Montessori high school and also the health career concentration, whether it was just about Hughes or whether it's the fact that we have 4 or 5 of our high schools that have the health career pathway. That's on page 3, and you're right, the third Montessori high school, and that does, and then also you'll see on K on 3, Health Career Center, or a more formal coalition of CPS health programs already in CPS high schools. So, I mean, the 2 ideas that you and Ryan have forwarded for a number of years, I honestly can remember that when you first proposed that, Melanie, the third Montessori high school, that was 5 years ago, recognizing what those trends were. So hopefully most of that's been captured here, but that also then leads us into, on the Montessori piece, to your point, do you expand, or do we do something with Jacob Center, because it truly is the central corridor? Maybe that becomes the third Montessori high school. Or I know the superintendent's very interested in having a a career training center, and it's a magnificent big campus. And some people have said the best thing to do about the building is maybe raise it and start anew, so that could be something. And then it leads us into the Meridian plan, too, because we have now put a reputable Montessori high school on the west side at great cost and effort, and a Montessori high school on the east side, which is obviously Clark. And our Montessori elementaries are divided east and west. If you attend where one of our little ones attends, which is Parker Woods, they would be going to Gamble. Or if you're in North Avondale, so that east-west and maybe central quarter of the Meridian plan, or Meridian suggestion, whatever you want to call it. I'm just glad they're not talking about hemispheres and equators and things. So it's a big moment for me as a social studies teacher. But yeah, there's ways to address this. The financial piece that Jen has mentioned, maybe some of that, the COVID money for space might deal with the Walnut issue, the Meridian and dividing the district up a bit. There's so many things we need to talk about, but part of this has to be part of this new CPS. So we can't linger anymore or keep talking about something for 3 years or 4 years. This needs to be kind of all part of it. But Mel, you had a thing about, I know we're all, let me go to Jen real quick before I go to Ryan. Jen, you had said that when COVID hit, we had at least 3 projects that we were anticipating doing. Can you repeat those? Because I have a 4th and a 5th to add based upon my notes.
The 3 projects that have been on my list was Hyde Park, Pleasant Ridge, Montessori, and Walnut as the top 3 priorities.
And I added, and I think I remember this from the meeting where we insisted too that we knew that there was a lot of work being done at Dater and West High, both the campus and the school buildings, so that they had more interfacing as well as being ready to welcome like the Roberts move for IB and stuff. So I mean that was on my list, as well as the 3 you mentioned, and that was, as you said, Pleasant Ridge, Montessori, Walnut.
The Dater West High I thought was programmatic, not physical.
I think it is programmatic, but I think too there was some emphasis, whether it was the campus or whether it was somehow interrelating those. But that's just my memory on my notes. The top 3, there's no dispute about. So Mel, you've been working about the Walnut thing, but Ryan, did you want to talk a little bit about what the career piece was, with the health career that you had been talking about?
Yeah, I love SCPA, and did anybody see Coming to America too, by the way? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I watched it last night, and it was great. And I heard that one of the daughters is an SCPA grad. And I think it's just a great example of when you have really specialized and you bring talent and build that talent, then go on to great things. Well, I think looking at the other side of the brain, or another side of the brain, and thinking about the life sciences, and you merge that with the fact that in the jobs projection for our region, the majority of the top job growth is all in healthcare. And there's every sort of job in healthcare. I mean, I would love to have the person that my dad just got diagnosed with kidney cancer. I'd love to have somebody solve that for us. I mean, we know people with Alzheimer's to solve that. So we could groom students to go into these careers to change the world, is what our mantra is. And at the same time, there are just infinite numbers of jobs at our local hospital systems. There's a giant growth driver for this region. A lot of jobs just going empty and or being recruited from far outside the city. And I know one of the big institutions that I won't speak the name of the guilty, but I learned that they only have about 6% of their staff who are diverse, who are African American, and it's shameful, you know. And so the question is, how can we make sure that we help create a pipeline? And in talking with some people from that institution's leadership, they would be willing to invest because it would help them achieve their goals. They have jobs that need to be filled. They have diversity and inclusion goals they want to fill. I think there's a win-win, and we have some of the top institutions in the world right here that I can just imagine the experiential learning that can happen throughout their career, or I mean through their K-12 piece, that could land them in jobs that could be certificated and going right to work, or others who may go on to solve the next big healthcare crisis. So I think there's just so much opportunity that is a win-win-win across the board for our city, and equity and inclusion, and playing right into the top job growth. So I would love to see us figure that out.
I think it makes sense, and you've been saying that. I know that in student achievement, on Friday, we talked about the fact that the zoo school, which was our very first career piece, the zoo school will be able to actually take entrances or enrollees possibly from the rest of our high schools as well, that it won't be limited to one school. And even talked in terms of them suggesting too that there's a possibility of within a district a dual enrollment, which would help expand our career efforts. So I think that's a great idea. And you know, Hughes is an obvious start, but to you, as you pointed out last year, you know, great things are happening at Woodward and great things are happening at Riverview as it speaks to health. So there's a way to kind of organize that. And I guess top priority right now, Melanie, is the Walnut expansion, and how to do that so there's something in place, possibly as early as Labor Day, or maybe August, but certainly Labor Day, in order to deal with the social distancing. And you want to kind of update us where you were, Mel?
Yes, I wanted
regarding
to
Walnut.
tell you all about a meeting that I was invited to, a Zoom meeting, and actually it was a great group. Okay, so I'm sure Ryan and Eve and Jen remember two of the participants that invited me, Olga San Miguel and Steve Simon, who have been speaking during our Hearing the Public. They're both Walnut parents. And Ms. San Miguel is on the faculty of the University of Cincinnati, and she asked if I would be interested in connecting with Professor Edward Mitchell, who is I believe he's the dean of DAP, in particular, working with his architecture and design students in a partnership with CPS on future projects. And in particular, we were discussing Walnut, what he can offer, and he was very excited about this. He says, I've really been wanting to connect with CPS. I wasn't quite sure how to do it. And, Ms. San Miguel came up with this idea for a meeting. But he runs, he calls them studios for his graduate students, senior students, and also includes, mature faculty. And they develop big projects. And when I ran the idea of the Hughes Annex past him, he thought that would be a great project for studio. We talked about, kind of breaking down these projects into short term, what we can do the short term for Walnut, the medium term, and the long term. What he's proposing is long term, because his students who he would recommend for this studio would not even be available until the fall. And then you have the semester of development. He also offered to get involved the alumni co-op partners and architectural firms that DAP and the University of Cincinnati work with to partner with you, with us. And you see on this venture, and in particular, we were talking about Hughes, but it's not to limit Hughes. His idea is that this would be the beginning of a partnership between DAP and the architectural and design students and Cincinnati Public Schools. So he also suggested, I'm using his technical terms, and maybe some of you out there understand this. He had explained this all to me, but he also talked about design charades, where his faculty and advanced students could come up with ideas and designs for temporary buildup. And what that looks like, we don't know, because we don't know what kind of space we can use. We can maybe use parking lots. There's property across Jonathan that at one point was going to be condos. I'm not sure who even owns that property now, but that's an idea too, to use this faculty and advanced students for temporary buildup and what they call their charades. And then for a short-term project, I threw this out, and he's Professor Mitchell is a Clifton resident. And I said, have you ever walked behind Fairview School? And there's a carriage house there. Well, he said, I've gone past it a million times, and I guess he never really thought of it or knew what we did with it. And I told him it's been vacant. We kind of dismissed the project for classroom space because for the money that we would spend on it, it would be too small. And we've talked about a pavilion. So he's even interested in that as kind of like we discussed pre-COVID, a short-term project to expand the usable space in that campus area with CANS, with Fairview, and with the rec center in Rawson House. So that's just kind of a summary, a synopsis of the conversation that I had with Professor Mitchell, Ms. San Miguel, and Mr. Simon. And they would very much, Professor Mitchell would very much like to continue this conversation with those in our administration that would be appropriately assigned to at least explore this partnership. So that would be my recommendation to this committee, that we forward this to, well, actually, we probably should notify the board first that we're discussing, that I initiated, or, and Eve was there for a short time, that we're exploring this partnership. And then at the full board meeting, we can make the assignment to the administration, if the board is willing, to make contact with Professor Mitchell to further explore this.
Melanie, I think that's great. I think to your point, when Ms. Bruckner and I put the minutes together from this meeting, which is still occurring, we'll have that be part of the minutes, and I'll clue in. We'll attach the growth plan yet again, the second draft, the Meridian plan that I still want to talk about today. And also just this arbitrary way that I started to divide up the three corridors of the district. And then maybe, if we can clue Carolyn in, that maybe this can be part of the discussion. I think, do we have a meeting next Monday, or when is that? I can't remember. I know we have a meeting this Wednesday.
Yes, there's a meeting Wednesday the 10th, and then Monday the 15th.
Let's try, Pat, if we can, to make sure we have the minutes possibly for that meeting.
For the 15th.
That would be great, and then maybe we can make sure we're building some discussion in somewhere along the line.
The 10th or the 15th?
15th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not to worry, Pat. I wouldn't lay the 10th on you, but at least that'll, to Melanie's point, it's not going to be a recommendation, but it's a sharing, and then the whole board can talk about some of these items as a package or what have you. Jen, do you have any knowledge of other facilities besides Jacobs and Hughes Annex and the Carriage House and
The
some of the other
Heinold site,
buildings?
we still own the Heinold site.
We have the land itself. Yes, great.
Which site?
Heinold.
I know.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I know there's some great interest in how we're going to be using Rawson as long as Mr. Hoyne is able to take care of some of the other legal aspects. I know that we've had a request from a number of our outdoor groups to see if there's any way they can use, I think that coach house, not the carriage house that Mel's talking about, but the expanded garage coach house that is behind Rawson and fully renovated and beautiful. And that might not be a bad idea to share it with partners, since there's some issues about us using it for educational or instructional purposes. Ryan, do you have some thoughts about this growth and how important it is and what we need to do to kind of get the mojo back after this whole COVID experience?
Yeah, I go back to the conversation we had when we were talking about the budget that, I think starting to get projections that will validate that, hey, Walnut, we know we have to go forward that expansion, check. And then kind of just doing a pressure test to say, has anything changed based on our projections? And we're going to have all this extra data coming in for next week's meeting. And I think it's going to tell the story that probably most of these, I think there's this theory that we've lost tons and tons, which we really haven't if you look at the report that the administration gave us to the board. And I think knowing that we can use some of the funding to deal with some of these challenges, this won't be the last pandemic, they say, probably in our lifetime. And, let's get ahead of it and solve some of these space issues on the kind of existing projects. But, I think there's a couple of these. I totally support the Montessori as a Montessori family here. And I hear this in the Montessori family community. Everybody's in these Facebook groups and things, and they say, where are our options? And, we've added a lot of Montessori schools just since I've been on the board on the elementary side. So I think that's such a good one. I really love this health science one. I hate to be a broken record because, I think it hits a regional objective of getting people in good paying jobs. But I also think there are other people that would help us pay for those or that component. And then, as it relates to are you going to talk separately about the Meridian plan?
No, go to it now if you'd like. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been a fan of that too because I learned from the two incredible women. Happy International Women's Day, by the way, to my board colleagues here.
Thank you.
I did that to the folks on the phone before we got started, but for the two of you especially. But, one thing I learned the first year on the board was on finance was, we cannot keep spending this dollar amount for transportation. And I think, those maps that we did early on, like I couldn't understand. I remember first year on the board, school started. I was so excited. Met these two young men, elementary age kids, right in North Avondale. I thought they'd be going up the street to the school where my kids were. They're right in our neighborhood. Where are you going? Well, he's going to Riverview East, and he's going to maybe it was Reese Price. I'm not sure. But point was, it was nowhere near, and there were 3 schools close. And I said, well, did you know? Yeah, I think I knew, but we had a cousin, and we used to live there, blah, blah. Point is, that was a lot of transportation time. I mean, the one little boy was going to be sitting on the bus for 45 minutes, when in 3 minutes he could have been at North Avondale or South Avondale or a little bit further, some other options. But all that transportation does equate to a lot of funding. So I think for that reason, and I think it makes us do a checkup from the neck up on the quality offerings, no matter what part of the quadrant, or the the Meridian plan that you're in, that everybody's got good quality choices. But I think that's good because it makes us raise our game. But I also think one thing we've learned from the pandemic is having it broken up. I could see that Laura might have kind of a deputy that was in one that oversaw this half and one that oversaw this half. And it would allow maybe for some additional local level decision making instead of doing everything, we're all remote for all 60 plus schools. And we're all like, would that allow us to just based on individual needs and that type of thing? I think it provides a more customized experience. I understand some other districts do that, have divided them up in that way. So I think there's a variety of things that allows us to be more nimble, but in how we operate. But I really love the idea of saving the transportation dollars. So I am absolutely for us moving forward with that. And again, that was one of those things kind of marching down the field, and then like that, and Walnut Hills and everything else, pandemic hit. So I think it's important for us to surf at those again.
Great. Mel, do you have any comment about follow-up to what you found out regarding Walnut? And I'm anticipating the administration is going to take care of the situation at Walnut and space with all due speed. I know that we said again in student achievement, like we said at the board meeting twice, even this, and you've referenced it now about the kind of the backup or glut, if you will, maybe at Clark because of the Walnut initial tests that obviously have been influenced by the COVID experience. So it's a domino kind of effect. And I know we want to get our students back and our families back. But
well, I was going to say, ahead. Can we? And I'm sure this can be done pretty quickly. Can we find out who owns the property across Jonathan that's vacant? Because that's a little plot of land. And I know at some point, maybe 15 years ago, I mean, it's been quite a while, that they were going to have a condo development there. I know it's not a very big parcel, but if we're looking at some temporary buildup for the short term, that's something that isn't being used by us currently, and it's vacant.
Well, here's if let's say, as we look at the properties around Walnut, and know that if that's a longer term solution, because I know we did get some dollar amounts based upon expanding the campus, as I recall, from the facilities people, and I think Jen will recall that too. If that's a longer term, even if we were to do something reasonably well with the Hughes annex, the reality is with the needs that we have at Spencer, and figuring that out, there's reason to use Hughes or some other of our facilities in the short run, the short term, and anticipation of the longer run. So it is a matter of money. It's a matter of short term versus long term, as well as the expanding of, as Vera mentioned. I think something that Melanie and I discovered is that the folks. Wait. Yes.
I was thinking of that small parcel in the short term, something we could put up a dome or, one of our modulars or something like that. So
it's not either or, it could be both. Yeah.
Right. Just to clarify that. And if that's available, we might be able to put a couple of modulars there and not, I'm just saying that, not.
We know that, yeah. I stand corrected on that, and I know that the estimate that we got originally of Walnut was about expanding the campus or the buildings on the campus or what have you. That's what was initially discussed rather than a different building, because it does require a change in programming at Walnut if indeed some grades are separated, because they do allegedly so many cross-grade courses or what have you. But something that we discovered last year too is that the folks with all the development and what's happening in Madisonville, that community, and where we are and what we've invested there and what we lost in not getting to buy what we were thinking about doing, or at least had contemplated. We have J.P. Parker, but we also have now renovated, and to some degree, the old Lighthouse School. And I know there's an interest, as Melanie and I found out last year, tremendous interest in the Madisonville area for outdoor ed. And already you have J.P. Parker that is already global environment course. And, maybe you make a J.P., it's not always just another building. You might make J.P. Parker, which is a PK 6 or so, why not make it a PK 8 and you use both of those buildings, J.P. Parker and the newly renovated Lighthouse. So there's all kinds of things to be talking about that if we just really focus on how far we've already come and the things that are on the list, things to add to the list, just like Melanie has done, and then people like Ryan and Melanie persisting on the third Montessori high school, or me kind of focusing so much on the Meridian plan. I think we need to be pretty aggressive about pursuing it. Ms. Wagner.
I just had another thought of the Gamble High School outbuildings.
Yes, there are at least 3 houses, or 2 houses and another kind of garage.
Yeah, I think it's 2, yeah. But there's a lot of land there.
A lot of land. And I know that up at Aiken, as they are trying to pursue this whole they got an agriculture staff member, I think, assigned for career ed. They're developing, especially with their international students, a farm. And so there's they ran the football team out of the barn that's up there, and are actually making it a barn for the farming equipment. So an additional thing, just to throw it in, and I don't mean to keep emphasizing this, but the CPS outside people are conducting audits of all of our campuses as to where and how we can have outdoor educational sites, just like Melanie's talking about the carriage house at Fairview, or how can we use Rawson. So it's a lot of interesting things. Other comments and thoughts as we look at the Meridian and we look at growth, and we kind of think of the district in 3 different corridors. We're good. What we can do then is share these documents in some of this conversation. Also, Ms. Bruckner did put together a document for us that shows it's really amazing, and we'll send this too as an addendum to the minutes, even though we didn't distribute these. It shows that we have PK6 buildings, we have PK8 buildings, we have PK12 buildings, we have K6 buildings, we have K8 buildings, we have K12 buildings, and we have 712 buildings. We have standalone Rising Stars, and we also have a hospital satellite. We have CDA. We have the Spencer Center, which is 3 and grade 3 through 11. Jacobs Center, which is AEAS. Lighthouse. And then we also have juvenile detention. I mean, I don't think we often focus on how varied this district is, and I know that it complicates things, and I think they're all, I'm sure, needed. But just as best we can is to answer the needs of these particular schools. Other comments or issues? If it's okay with the committee, I'll just make sure we attach all these documents, and maybe if we can study them and be ready to talk about them as part of the minutes or as part of board matters or updates or inquiries, however the President Jones wants us to approach this, if that's okay with all of you, that's how we'll do it. Other items you want us to share within the minutes to make sure they're in the minutes?
Well,
Yes,
I don't know
ma'am.
if this. Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I don't know if they're the right place, and as we're thinking about growth and kind of evolving, that conversation that we had before about kind of getting in step with what the city is doing.
Yes.
With the green initiatives, and I think we, even at that one meeting, said, wouldn't it be great if we could say we're the greenest district to match the greenest city, which we put that bold statement out. And then, things coming down from Washington, does that open up areas of funding to be able to pay for that, because we now have a focus there nationally? But I would love to see that somehow, some way into this growth plan. And I think it touches multiple things. A, that's going to be a career path for some people. B, saves resources. And C, it's the right thing to do for our community and our world,
I'm very glad you've resurfaced this. I know we had the folks in from the city to talk about this 2 years ago, if I recall, or something like that. And they are, I know, still interested. But to the earlier point we made with Jen, I think part of what some of us are thinking about are thinking that big. What if to go green or what have you? Or you keep hearing me say, Jen, all the time, let's be shovel ready whenever they pass this infrastructure. And very frankly, it's the fact in part that we not only did that resolution about the COVID vaccination, but it's the fact that we've been building a safety infrastructure for over a generation in CPS, that we were able to get among the first to get the vaccine. So all these things that we've been working on, we need to have that kind of asset measurement and use. But Jen, you had a comment.
Unrelated to the growth plan, it's just under other business. So whenever
Okay,
you're ready,
hold on.
when you're finished.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Other comments? Ryan, thanks for resurfacing the green initiative. I think that's super. Mel, do you have any comments before we leave growth beyond what we've been talking about? You good? Ryan's good. So we
All
are
good.
ready to, excellent. We are ready to move on, and let's be ready to discuss this on Monday and be advocates for as much of this as we can, or at least get a good dialogue occurring. Jen, on other business, what do you have for us?
So there's a lot of chatter amongst the urban treasurers on opposition against House Bill 126. It's come up several years in a row under different attempts, but it's the tightening of the rule, or the changes in practice when a property owner wants to challenge their value of property to the Board of Revisions. The House Bill 26 is making it harder for school districts to challenge. They have to do more steps and shorten the window, and it's going to take board action now, a resolution. And so there's a draft letter that's going around, and I'm guessing you would like me to participate and sign it as a representative of the school district, but I didn't want to act without you all's support. Dan Hoying's already written language about it year after year, so it's not something that's going to be new in our opposition. But
members, so you feel confident in advising the treasurer to join other treasurers?
Yes, I do.
We do. So maybe if Jen, if you can get Dan to kind of submit some sort of draft of that letter, that maybe even give it to the board as this Wednesday or next Monday.
There's a draft that's already written by Ryan Pendleton, the treasurer of Akron.
Okay.
And so I'll send it around. I have a copy of it.
That's great.
Okay.
And we'll do you need, Melanie, I'll ask you, does she need full board to say yes, or is it okay to suffice with us saying it, or does just circulating it among members? What works best?
This was brought before us before in finance, wasn't it? And we had this in our minutes. So this isn't something new. Is this time sensitive, or can it wait till Wednesday?
I think it can wait till Wednesday as long as I get something out on Thursday, because I think they're looking for testimony shortly thereafter.
Right.
Why don't we put this in the minutes as an action item, and then the board can agree.
Right.
But for the 10th, but Pat, I think Pat was going to do the minutes on the 15th, so I didn't want you to miss the window of opportunity.
Oh, it's that's why I'm saying, does it require the full board? I don't know that it requires the full board beyond circulating the letter. I thought that's sort of where you were going, since it's been raised before.
Yeah.
Right.
There's
no. Here's the answer. Wednesday, you're going to be giving. You mentioned you're going to kind of be giving these treasurer reports. Yeah. Could you build that into your treasurer report, and the board says that's a great idea, then you've got it Wednesday.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Do that, and that can move it fast.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any other members or administration have anything to add to today's Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee special meeting?
I would just say it's exciting to be in these conversations again.
Yes. With a bunch of decisions coming up in the next week or so. Jen, you should report that you and the district did okay about Moody's, that interview did happen.
Yes, we had it.
Go ahead.
Sorry. You want me to talk about it now, or were you saying at the treasurer's report?
Treasurer's report, definitely, but just tell the finance so they know that it happened, it's over, and it sounded good.
Okay.
Something like that. But say it in treasurer speak.
Yes. So whenever we do any kind of financing action, like the refinancing of the debt, the 2014 COPS, they do a rating call, what they call a surveillance call. And this one was very short. They gave us the questions ahead of time. It was a 30-minute call. And it went exceptionally well. Moody's is very supportive. They're very impressed with our innovation and growth. And so we were able to talk about what we're doing to regain our enrollment growth and plans to move forward, old shore, new shore kind of thing. And so we both thought it went really well. And then David Conley, our finance advisor, was exceptionally pleased. So we should hear something by the end of the week, whether we're going to move forward, because the interest rates are changing a bit. So I can give that update as well on Wednesday. Maybe I'll know more by then.
Yeah, that would be great. And they were particularly enthusiastic about all that the district had done regarding COVID. And he basically said, in all his work around the country, interviewing the various districts, that he had heard no one say all that we had said as to what we had done. And again, it's good to hear that, considering we seldom hear anything good about all that we've done. So he was a little bit awestruck, I thought, frankly. So good job to the administration and what we've all gone through. And to Ryan's point, it's great to get back on the fast track again, and not the treadmill, just that endless,
or the hamster wheel.
Stuff. There you go. So if I have no other items before us, then I would suggest we are adjourned, and everybody have a beautiful early evening. It is gorgeous and going to get even prettier. Thank you.
Ma'am. Thank you.
And thanks to all the tech folks, and thank you, Ms. Bruckner. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you.